a career corporate go-getter that impressed me with his extensive resume when I first met him in 2018. From stories like how he boldly mailed Larry Ellison of Oracle, telling him what's wrong with the company and landing a huge job, to now telling me that he gains his satisfaction as a leader by watching other people around him grow. This compelling sit-down is a must-watch for anybody in a corporate setting. This is Bob Shaver, and you're watching Driven. So, Bob Shaver, thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you.
And,
pleased to be here.
Thank you. And it's really interesting to have you here because you have a very extensive corporate background. And I wanted to start off, obviously, going over some of the highlights and some of your roles over the years, and just, to get it started.
Sure.
First perfect audit in the history of Xerox.
Yep.
Made the Extraordinary Potential Xerox list.
Yep.
Founded a business within Xerox. Led corporate turnarounds, had the largest commercial real estate deal in the history of California, and Bob Shaver Day in Frisco, Texas. Just some of the few highlights. Some of your roles: Oracle VP of Administration, President of Oracle Real Estate Corporation, Ernst & Young Director of Administration, currently the Chairman of Leander Economic Micro Group. But after all these highlights and roles, influencing others to succeed is something that, you've told me you enjoy the most.
Right.
But why though?
I think it's generational.
Okay.
I could recount for you the story of my career beginning back at Xerox in 1973, and a fellow named Pat Kelly who recognized qualities in me that I probably wasn't even aware of at the time, and gave me opportunities and put me in situations where I had to grow and respond to be successful. So I learned a lot from that, and I modeled my subsequent career after the way Pat had treated me. And so I was always looking for smart people who were ambitious, who were willing to take risks, and who were nice at the same time. And so I've had a lot of luck with doing that sort of thing. And as a result, there are lots of people out there who maybe didn't know what they were going to be able to do with their own careers that I was able to help. And that benefited me tremendously because they did good work for things that I was responsible for.
Results.
They showed results. And at the same time, they've gone on to do other wonderful things. Bestseller lists, New York Times. One of them is building George Lucas's museum in Los Angeles now. I recently met with one up in Northern California who is a chief executive officer of Canine Companions, a national nonprofit providing support dogs. And so that gives me tremendous satisfaction because I was able to help somebody and see the results of it.
Well, let me ask you this though.
Sure.
So with Pat Kelly, was it where you, a gentleman, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. Did he take you under his wing because he saw something? Or did you say, hey, he's somebody that I got to get close to, or was it just organic, or how exactly did it happen?
I was so focused and worried about my responsibilities at the time because I had been hired to do a job that I didn't have any background for. Came from the trucking industry and was moved into a finance and administration job at Xerox. So it was, whoa. And the person I replaced had been running a great shop, so there was that pressure as well. And I was very dependent upon the people who reported to me, and for their help for my own success. And I think Pat saw me working my way through all of that and building relationships with the people. This is in Minneapolis, Minnesota at the time, and like I said, saw something in me that I probably didn't even understand about myself at that time. And then he started moving me into jobs, most of which I was, again, not prepared for. And
not qualified for,
not qualified for, not prepared for. And it was, well, you better figure this out. And I did. And so he tolerated my failures and not very well, but you know, he didn't he had lots of reasons to be angry at me, and but he saw my potential.
Like he had patience, we'll call it. Plenty of patience, maybe?
No, he had no patience.
Really?
But you understood that he had no patience.
I see.
But that he was, you know, in the end, my career and the career of the people who've worked for me all come from Pat Kelly.
Wow. And do you still talk to him? Is Pat Kelly still around?
I talked to him yesterday.
Really?
Yeah.
And this was 1973-ish?
For 73. Yeah.
Wow, decades and decades later. Well, now let me ask you, so let's rewind a bit more. College graduate?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
What school did you go to?
Eastern Illinois.
Eastern Illinois.
So a place that most people have not heard of unless they know about Tony Romo. So
there we go. Now, who were you in college though? Or maybe even who were you in high school? Because with what you've done over the years, it seems like you've been very competitive to just keep going and going and going up.
I wasn't. I was lazy.
Really?
I had gifts, natural gifts, but I didn't respect those, and I was more involved in social things.
Okay.
And
partying, girls, maybe?
Partying and girls and the band and fraternity in college. And as a result, I dropped out a couple times. I was on academic probation. Then I got married and had a child. And
early 20s, I'd assume?
Yes, and finished 4 years in the Air Force. And when I got out, I went back to college. I couldn't afford to transfer because I had all those bad grades there. But decided that, or realized that I could play it as a game, and I could treat it as a job. And the job was 8 hours a day. So if I had 4 hours of class, I would spend 4 hours studying, and then I would go home at night. And the game was, the score was kept with grades. And so I realized, well, I could compete in this arena. But the opportunity to go to work at Xerox, big company, very, very competitive, lots of attention paid to results. There were 107 people, men and women, doing the same job that I did across the United States, and they would stack rank us from 1 to 107. So being somewhere near the top became very important.
I see. Until you kind of knew where you were.
Absolutely.
Every week, every month, or whatever. So let me ask you, during the whole college time, was there somebody that you looked at as a mentor or as a coach, or were you just kind of winging it the whole time?
I think...
even if it was a mother, father, or family member?
My fraternity brothers were too much like me, so whereas we're still all friends and everybody's gone on to do good things. The person I remember was a guy named Bert Holly, who taught business law. And in the time that I was in college, that turned out to be one of the most beneficial classes that I took.
Really?
A couple, 3 courses from Mr. Holly. And one of the things that you actually could use, later on in your career. So that's who I recall from those days.
Oh, okay, so it was more of someone within the school system, more over a parent, we'll say. Okay. So now let me ask you about Xerox, because obviously Xerox back in those, I think Robert Kiyosaki was an old Xerox guy, right?
Could be.
Yeah, I believe he was.
Beyonce's dad was. I mean,
was he?
Yeah, there's lots of famous, a lot of people at Xerox who've done well.
A lot of the old school folks that did very well.
Yeah, Xerox doesn't exist anymore, so.
Yeah. Well, there was something on here. I want to make sure I quote it right. Extraordinary potential list. As well as the first perfect audit in the history of Xerox. Before we move forward, can you elaborate on those? Because I'm really curious, because it's a highlight that that you're proud of.
Let's take the first one. One of the things that one of the opportunities that Pat Kelly gave me was to go
challenges.
Yes, to open a new branch in Des Moines, Iowa. And he actually gave me a choice of I could take a promotion to Detroit and move into an organization that was already operating, or I could go to Des Moines where there was nothing. But it was a level transfer. So
lateral move, I think.
Lateral move.
Lateral move.
And so I took the Des Moines job. And I told him at the time, because I wanted the 2 years that I'd had at Xerox already, I had thought I'd learned a lot, and I wanted to apply what I'd learned with my own point of view and sort of try to do something, that I could create for myself.
Yeah.
And I think that was the beginning of my own recognition, and other people have said this about me, that the things I really like to do is either build it or fix it.
Okay.
And once I've got the right processes and people and checks and everything in place, it loses its challenge for me. So it's these front end things that really draw my attention and that I feel the most creative when I'm doing those.
I see.
So the Des Moines audit, we'd been open for 9 months, and we got this notice that they were sending internal auditing.
Surprise!
Now this is like, whoa, because Xerox had a big internal audit group.
Yeah.
And for them to come into a brand new organization and to find out that we were doing everything in the way that we were supposed to, and to recognize us with this perfect audit was a great feather, in my cap at the time.
Yeah.
And I think thanks to Pat and other things that I did along that way, I was recognized as somebody who had potential to move up in the organization. At a point later on, I was recruited out of Xerox by somebody that I'd worked for years before at Xerox.
Okay.
And so I left Xerox, but I never left what it meant to me, or the training I got, or the opportunities, the friends, whatever. In fact, one of the things that attracted Larry Ellison at Oracle about me was that I came from Xerox.
Okay.
He admired Xerox very much, appreciated the technology, but he also appreciated the culture.
I see what you're saying.
And so part of my charter at Oracle was to bring elements of the Xerox culture into Oracle, and I was able to do that.
Yeah, so Xerox, I would assume it was kind of like your first real job.
It was a big job, yeah.
The first big job, 'cause I'm assuming you had smaller roles.
I had a couple smaller roles before that, you bet.
Okay, so from Xerox, you went directly to Oracle.
From Xerox, I went to a startup.
Okay.
In
what year was this, by the way?
Gosh, I don't know. Let's see, so 72, maybe 83, 84, something like that. Some TI guys and some Xerox guys were running what we call the Skunk Works in Plano.
Okay.
And they had...
Was it Lockheed Skunk? No,
No,
that's
this was
something totally
Mead.
different.
This is Mead Corporation.
Oh, okay.
Mead Office Systems was the name of the thing. And I was recruited to go, and I admired this guy that recruited me.
Yeah.
Thought they were working on something really interesting. And was unhappy at Xerox. I'd been there 11 years at the time. Wasn't happy with my boss,
Burned out or whatever,
that kind of
yeah.
stuff. So they caught me at the right time. So I left, this will probably undermine all of my credibility. I left 11 years and what I had built at Xerox, went to Mead, and we were out of work 45 days later. Wow. Because when we got in there and realized the technology and what their vision was for how they were going to use this, we wrote a white paper that said, I'm sorry, but we don't see how this is ever going to work.
Yeah.
And in fact, it has the potential to really cause you problems because you're about to step into an arena that's already dominated by 3M, Xerox, and IBM, with the Japanese coming on strong.
Oh, my.
Ooh. So they were, they were very kind, wrote us all nice checks and said, thank you very much, and shut it down, which was what we recommended.
Yeah.
So that was a good lesson in tell the truth, even when it may not be what everybody wants to hear.
You know what's funny you say that is, obviously a mutual friend of ours, Bob Manza, that's also on this show.
Sure.
He, just real quick, he had a very similar story because he was a Pepsi guy. I didn't know this. He said he got caught up in we'll call it the hype. He left to go to Gateway because back then, early 2000s, everyone, this and that. He left after, I think, a year and a half, 2 years. He ended up going right back to where he came from.
Yep.
Because, once again, he got caught up in, this, that. And he's like, this isn't for me.
One of my best friends did that, left Xerox and went to McKinsey.
Really?
And was there like a year. One day I see him, Ralph, and he says, everybody over there is trying to find a great job with a great company, and I realized that I had left that. So he came back. So I think, finding the right place where you feel like you can really make a contribution, being with people, who are like you and that you really enjoy the satisfaction of going to work is tremendously important.
Yeah, and you're celebrated as well, because I've heard a term go where you're celebrated, not
Yeah.
where you're tolerated.
Right, exactly.
That type of thing.
Yeah.
So now you get to Oracle.
Yep.
And because you played roles
Skipped
in...
over one software company, but that's fine. That's fine.
Did you want to elaborate on it?
No. This was the first turnaround that I'd ever been part of. And so when the Mead thing closed, I started looking for a job. And so I sent out hundreds and hundreds of letters.
Yeah.
Everybody else is playing golf because they got these nice severance checks, you know.
And back then there was no internet to look on.
Why worry? I have all this money in the bank.
Yeah.
I'm like, no. I have 3 kids, and you know.
Yeah.
So I wrote all these letters, and one of them was to a software company in Dallas.
Okay.
And I got back the little "thank you for your interest" postcard, you know, which went in the trash with all of the other stuff that that was coming back. And a couple days later, I got a phone call from this company, and they said, "We'd like for you to come in for an interview." And I said,
Were they local?
"Yeah,
Locally?
in Dallas." And I said, "Didn't I just get a thanks, no thanks from you?" "Well, yes, but we've been talking about it, and we'd like for you to come in." Yeah. So I did, and I joined a turnaround. It's called University Computing, and it was a company founded by Sam Wiley. And he and Ross Perot had been...
I was gonna say, the name sounds familiar.
Been on the same sales team at IBM. Both did the same thing. Sold a 360 to their customers. Left and helped the customer build a business around, you know, to their great benefit, both Sam and Ross. So that was a turnaround. We about 2.5 years. Great team of people. Everybody was just, you know, they'd all come from great companies.
Rock stars.
A
players.
It was like, if you knew if you were part of that team, you must be good.
That is awesome, though.
Sold it for a 50% premium.
Okay.
And looking for another job. So I wrote a letter to Larry Ellison and said, you know, from the outside, maybe you're having problems with these kinds of things. And I'm pretty good at handling that kind of stuff. I'd like to come out and talk to you.
Yeah.
And
so you kind of like let him know you weren't really dogging his company.
No.
But you were just saying, by the way, these are things I'm noticing.
Absolutely. Sure. Well, and UCell had made an investment in Oracle. So we were well aware of what was going on inside the company.
Yeah.
And just on the strength of this cold letter, Larry had me come out, and we sat down and talked. And the first words out of his mouth were, "I'm not sure I want anybody like you in my company."
Really?
And I said, "Why is that?" And he says, "Well, you know, we have this entrepreneurial spirit going on. There's a lot of stress and tension, and I expect that the best ideas, the strongest minds are, you know, gonna bring all that forward."
Yeah. And what year was this, by the way?
This was 87.
Okay.
And so...
Totally pre-internet.
Totally.
Or consumer internet.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you could do email, and even that was
wasn't even really popular.
Really
then.
kludgy at the time.
Okay.
So, anyway, so I told Larry, I said, well, you know, I understand where you're coming from, but at the same time, you have all this chaos going on, which diverts a lot of attention, spends a lot of time and money and energy on things that need to run really, really well every day. And I said, and that's what I do. And and I told him point blank, which he told me years later that he really liked, if you don't start hiring somebody like me pretty soon, you won't have a company. And Larry being Larry, he thought that was great. So we literally created the job on a pad of paper.
Really?
In the interview.
So you let me just recap this.
Yeah.
So you literally hit up Larry Ellison.
Yep.
And basically say, these are things I'm noticing with your company.
Yep.
And then you say, I can fix that, or I'm the solution, we'll say.
Yep.
I'm the solution.
Yep.
So he took your word for it. Obviously, you had credibility over the years.
And I had my Xerox experience, and the guy that I had worked for in Dallas, Larry knew and respected very much.
Yeah. And then just created a role for you just like that.
Yep.
At the time, how big do you think Oracle was? Do you remember the numbers? Not money-wise, but as far as employees.
I had a 3-digit employee number.
Really?
So.
So in the late 90s, early 2000s, I was at Dell. And it's funny how you say a 3-digit employee number, which obviously the company was very young.
Very young.
So at the time, I was working the warehouse, material handling. I was a young guy. I was 20, 19, whatever it was. And there was a lady named Valerie that used to just walk by all the time with a notebook. We never knew what she did, okay? And I asked her one time, I said, Miss Valerie, you always walk by, you're always very happy. We don't know what exactly you do. And she said, oh, you know, I make things happen and blah, blah, blah. And I said, okay. And this is probably at this time, 99, maybe 2000, maybe right at 99, I can't remember. And I said, can I ask you something? She said, yeah. I said, how long have you been working for Dell? And she said, I've been with Michael since there was 6 of us in the office.
Ooh, yeah.
And I was like, oh.
Yeah, there were Oracle people there like that when I
joined.
Yeah.
We used to, back in the day, we
Yeah.
used to call them Dellionaires because of all the splits and this and
Right.
over the years. So I was like, no wonder she's always smiling. She's one of the Dellionaires.
That's right.
But okay, so you get to Oracle.
Yep.
And now because you're on the Leander Economic Development
Right.
Group, correct?
Yep.
Micro group, I believe.
Yep.
So obviously that has to do with real estate and business development and stuff that goes through the city of Leander.
Right.
But with Oracle, how did you get tied in with the real estate?
Well,
How did all that happen?
yeah, I think in 2 ways. In my first interview with Larry, one of the things we talked about was I had just completed a new corporate headquarters for my prior company in Las Colinas, up in Irving. And so he was very interested in that. And he had this idea that we needed, he wanted a new corporate campus. He wanted a world-class corporate campus. And he had estimated somehow that it was going to be more than 1 million feet.
Okay.
And the buildings that I had done in Las Colinas was 250,000 feet.
Yeah, yeah.
And I told Larry that it's just multiplication to go from one thing to the other.
Yeah.
And he believed me. So just shows you how little I knew at the time. And but the focus there was on process improvements. Recruiting was the single most important part of all my responsibilities. I had a broad portfolio of things that I was responsible for. The campus, the new campus, was a focus that we started on early on, because it takes a long time to build and to do that. And eventually we acquired a site in Redwood Shores, California, where the campus is today. And it's built out now to 1,250,000 feet, just on the original footprint. And that includes the usual high-tech things, you know, world-class restaurants, Olympic-sized swimming pool, a gymnasium, massage, you know, I mean,
the works.
The works. And the secret of all of that is that's all about recruiting. Because just as you see, you know, these corporate restaurant campaigns these days, you know, when I was at Google, you know, the restaurants were really an important part of our offerings to the employees. But a lot of it has to do with...
Like within the facility.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Dell had a, I forget the name, but it was more like a bar kind of whatever.
Well, it's in a way, it's cynical because you don't want people to leave campus because that takes time away from work.
Then they come back late.
Good restaurants. Good restaurants are part of a productivity scheme, but they're also a way to attract other people because people go, wow, I mean, the food here is fantastic. Just like the parties and just like the fitness center and everything else. Recruiting is the #1 thing. So even the way the campus looks and where it sits and everything is all about portraying an image that Oracle didn't have at the time that we started. They were the young upstart company competing against IBM and Microsoft and everybody.
Like all sizzle, no steak, or a little bit of steak?
Well, I think that we had a lot of sizzle for sure. And Larry's a brilliant guy, and he could see how things were going to go. And you know, my role just became to carry that out, that vision in the in the operational side of things.
I see.
So not sales, not finance, not development, others.
So out of all these roles over the years that you've had, I mean, because obviously we could just prick and pry into all of them, but over the years after all these roles, which one do you think for your career was the most rewarding, not just financially, but the one you truly enjoyed going into work every day for, and of course, why? Was it because of the team? Was it because you had free reign to kind of do your thing with nobody over your shoulder, or what exactly was it? Because there's obviously the entrepreneur life and the corporate life.
Right.
Some people leave the corporate life to become entrepreneurs, and they're like, oh, wait a second. You mean I got to work 20 hours a day?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of how. Well, in the beginning, at least.
Yeah.
In the beginning.
Well, high tech, you do work.
Yeah, and that
Lots
could be
of
like,
hours anyway.
Yeah.
But I've never been an entrepreneur. I've always, as we've talked about, I've been with major companies, which gives you the benefit of lots of resources, but there's also tremendous, it's no walk in the park either.
Yeah. It's high stress. It's a lot of stress.
So to answer your question, I would, and I used to tell my people at Oracle, the best team ever was the team in Dallas.
Okay.
Because everybody there was an A player. And we had a very short window of mission, improve the company and then sell it.
Okay.
And we were able to do that. We had a great leader, Greg Lemont. And so it was a challenge to go to work every day because you were working with people that you knew were better than you were in many, many cases.
Was it competition though within?
No. It was.
Good competition, not just.
It was a team. It was a team.
Yeah.
And so the Oracle group, we had a great team there as well, but it was many, many more people and more of an opportunity to influence because you're hiring all these young people and many of them are coming to their first job.
I see.
Like your job at Dell, we had people working in the warehouse who'd gone to the University of Michigan or Stanford or whatever, and they were there working in the warehouse as a way to get into Oracle.
Yeah, entry-level
jobs, but we had a plan for all of those people who were not technical.
Okay.
Right? Because we needed them, no question about that. But there was tremendous opportunity for them to find their way in Oracle and to grow into other things. I can remember when I was at Google, a young man approached me, reminded me that he had worked for me in the warehouse at Oracle.
Really?
And he was running Google Earth at the time.
Hey, how many years later was this?
Oh, I don't know.
10, 15,
years
whatever
years.
it is.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this though. So bringing young people on board, and of course, you know, you've been top roles in a lot of the roles that you've had, obviously, or top positions. What is it about leadership, that you think has made you successful as a leader, especially when you're dealing with people that they're handling boxes, but they got a college degree?
Right.
Or a lot of what I've learned, being around a lot of, business folk now and a bunch of corporate people now and really getting to know them, there's a lot of, what do you call it? What's the word? Egos. Like, oh, I came from so-and-so, I this, I that. So how did you as a leader throughout all these decades handle those kind of situations to where I'm better than what I'm doing or I'm too good? Do you know who I am? Do you know who hired me? That type of thing.
It's a symbiotic relationship.
Okay.
I needed them to do their work very, very well, or that would reflect badly on me because things would not go well. Operational kinds of problems. Or we wouldn't make the recruiting numbers that we needed, or whatever the challenges were in the various departments that worked for me. I needed for all of them to work really, really well.
Okay.
They needed from me resources and guidance and support because in many cases they were doing things they had absolutely no idea how to accomplish them.
Kind of how you fell into the roles early on.
Absolutely.
Pat Kelly, I believe, right?
I could relate to their situation, although I didn't go to the glamorous kinds of schools that they did.
Yeah.
But I could understand that sort of, I want to do well. I'm used to doing well because these were valedictorians. These kids that have always done really, really well. And so, like I said, symbiotic is the best way. It's also... It's a respect thing, okay? We would hire people for these entry-level jobs. I'll tell you one story, if we have time.
Yeah.
The woman that I met with a couple weeks ago in Santa Rosa, who's running Canine Companions, her first job at Oracle was to escort candidates through their interview process, make sure that the interviewer was there on time and completed the interview form, collect the interview form and bring those back at the end of the day so that we could review how the candidates had done. That was her job. So she was like this escort.
Concierge almost, not really, but something like that.
Babysitter, whatever. Today she's a chief executive officer.
Wow.
Okay. There were hundreds of people like that. Okay, the guy who's doing George Lucas's museum, I hired him originally as a building manager.
Wow.
Okay, and now he's the president of Lucas Properties. You had people that had so much potential.
Yeah.
All you had to do was show them how they could apply it. Meanwhile, you had needed them to do good work for you. But like I said, so my commitment to them was, I'm here to help you as best I can, get you the resources that you need to be successful. Your responsibility is to get the work done in the best way.
True, true. Now let me ask you this, because, obviously I'm 40 now, so I'm not old, I'm not young, I'm kind of at that weird age. I'm kind
That's
of
how I feel.
Yeah, exactly. Well, every day you can start something new.
Right.
That's the beauty of life.
Yep.
Me personally, I feel like I'm always getting started, like starting over again. But now let me ask you this. What do you think about the folks that, especially nowadays, and I don't want to say the millennials and this and that, but what I personally see is, let's say you look at somebody's Facebook page or somebody's LinkedIn page.
LinkedIn, I get a lot of LinkedIn requests.
Yeah, and like every 2-3 years, there's changing jobs. But back in your days, 70s, 80s, maybe even the 90s, when you got in with a corporation, you were there, I would assume, because remember, based on what I've seen, you're there for 10, 20, 30 years.
Sometimes. Yep.
Yeah, and it seems like now, like jobs are just stepping stones to get to somewhere else. What are your thoughts on the people that just jump ship every 2 or 3 years? And is it
part of what happened in the old days was, because these organizations were large, there were opportunities. So there were challenges. If you did well, you could get promoted, you could make more money. Maybe they'd transfer you somewhere that wasn't Des Moines.
Yeah.
And so there was that part of it. There was also what we called the golden handcuffs.
Okay.
Particularly at Xerox, the benefits were extraordinary.
Okay.
I mean, I had twins born premature while I was in Chicago. Never saw a bill.
Wow.
And you're talking lots and lots of money.
Yeah, I was going to say, yeah.
So again, there was a sort of a symbiosis kind of a thing to it as well.
They sweeten the pot, so you don't want to leave.
Right. So you don't want to leave. But at the same time, your career is sort of attenuated, in that you're in this path, finance, marketing, whatever.
Okay.
I was never, like I said before, I was never a guy that really cared so much about running things, going in every day, checking, making sure that the plates are still spinning is the expression I used to use. That, boring to me. I wanted the fun of figuring it out, making it go, letting other people run it, and seeing them enjoying what they're doing. So I think what's happened now is a couple of things have changed.
Okay.
The companies don't value the employees the way that wonderful companies like IBM and Xerox used to in the old days.
I see.
So that sort of has become more of a tenuous connection between employee and employer.
Well, do you think it's because they know that their shelf life isn't that long either?
Could be. Some of it may be that companies that like Xerox used to invest tremendous amounts of money in training people like me. Send us to seminars, give us all kinds of skills and enhancements and whatnot. So they were investing in us. I don't know the companies do that as much anymore.
Well, Dell was doing that in 99, 2000. When I was there, even Dell said, these are the courses that you have to take.
Yeah.
And remember, I'm 19, 20 years old.
Right.
I'm going to Influencing with Integrity, proactive
there
coaching.
You go. That's great.
And all of this, prerequisites for leadership roles. And I was a box handler.
There were great companies, in those days. Now you have more, my perception, to go to your question, is that there's a higher volume of companies, more companies out there, but smaller, right? Yeah. They're not all committed, as Larry was, to, we're here to build a great company.
Yeah.
That was another thing he said to me in my initial interview. We're here to build a great company. He wasn't there to get something started and flip it and move on to the next thing.
I see.
And maybe I'm wrong, but
free bagels and coffee every morning or whatever they're giving them.
But I would have done that.
Well, no, a lot of companies, like nowadays, it's funny because all these startups, I want to go here because they give you free bagels, and then on Fridays they cater Raising Cane's or whatever. And a lot of people go, the young folk go.
If it accomplishes the company's goal of being able to fill the jobs with the people that have the skills and talent that they need, I'm behind it.
Yeah, and nowadays pensions, because obviously now nobody even talks about pension anymore.
Yeah.
But in 70s,
401ks
80s,
now. But again, companies differentiate themselves that way, how much they match, if they match, what's the initial investment in it, when do options mature, all of these things are all dials that everybody's turning to accomplish the same thing, and that is attract and retain employees.
I see. So tell me about this with Oracle, because one of the highlights of your career was, and we don't necessarily got to go into exact dollar amount, but one of the things that's on your highlight list was you brokered, I guess, one of the largest commercial real estate transaction in the history of California.
Yep.
So I'm curious about that. How the heck did it happen?
Started at the first interview with Larry.
Okay.
This concept of we want a campus and we want a world-class campus. Because again, we were the startup, those people out there on the coast, all that stuff. And our competition had Armonk and these fabulous places, Microsoft. So we wanted something that was a statement about the quality of the company. So that was the original concept. Being on the peninsula between San Francisco and Silicon Valley, there's not a lot of land that's there for development. So you're limited in what your choices are.
Okay.
I had interviewed a young man, Victor Holtorf, that I'm still close with to this day, who came from MIT's real estate finance program. He had a master's degree, and he was graduating, and he had heard about or had studied a new real estate structure that only IBM had done, and he explained it to me in his interview with me, and I was so intrigued by it because it was nobody was doing this.
So new, we'll say.
That I told him in the interview, I said, if you'll come to work for me, we'll do that here. Wow. And so that's why he came to work for me, was because he could apply what he'd learned at MIT. So we had a big deal to do. We had constraints, of course.
Okay.
There's politics in every company. It is true that when the board finally approved the transaction that I proposed to them, one of the founders, Bob Miner, did not sign it.
Really?
Yeah, and because he didn't get tennis courts on the top of the garage. It's true. Otherwise, Bob was immensely supportive and a wonderful guy. So anyway, I wasn't the broker, I was the customer. I represented Oracle. Okay. We were the ones that had the money to be able to do the transaction. Okay. So I formed a team of broker, attorney, insurance company engineers, the elements that you need when you're on the customer side of things. Okay. And we went out and did the usual thing, looked around, did an RFP, settled on 3 different sites that we were attracted to. Okay. And I had a mental, and my team knew, which was 1 and 2 and 3. Yeah, yeah. And while we were doing that and working with the architects and all the things that go into selecting, do you like this color cloth on all 7 zillion chairs that we're going to buy?
Do you want the Natuzi leather?
Or do you like this other color? I mean, crazy little things like that. And great big things, how are you going to build this? What's the structure of the deal going to be? While we were doing that, the place that we wanted that was our #1 target was sold.
Really?
Bad day, really bad.
For everybody.
Really bad day. Oh no. Fortunately, we had a good #2, and it's the #2 that you see today.
Wow. And what year was this, more or less?
That was probably 90.
90?
Yeah.
So let me ask you, we're getting close to the end.
Sure.
About 10 minutes or so more. But I want to ask you, so I've heard wins, and now you said you had, obviously, it was a bad day for everybody when you didn't get what you wanted, because realistically things could have been totally different, but it is what it is. What do you think was the lowest point in your career over the past 10, 20, 30, 40 years that you're just like bummed out, thought it was finished, thought you're getting canned, you didn't hit certain numbers, whatever projection?
Have been canned, sure.
Or a few of the times.
Yeah, a couple of things come to mind. Certainly, when I went to Ernst & Young, I went there on a 2-year contract to accomplish a thing.
Okay.
And that was the reorganization of the firm
Okay.
that was already 107 years old and was controlled by the partners.
Okay.
So the people who you're working with every day are the actual owners of the company.
How many were there at the time, you think?
Thousands,
Okay.
hundreds at least. And you're taking headcount and therefore money
Yeah.
away from them. So it was a politically charged job with a major opportunity for them to save a lot of money.
Okay.
And I did other things while I was there, ran the purchasing department, did an HR application,
Yeah.
little things on the side.
Yeah.
And
It's all coming
anyway,
back to you.
so at 9 months, we presented to the management committee a $50 million opportunity,
Okay.
which they accepted. And they said, okay, thank you very much. We won't need you for the rest of your contract.
Hold on. So you presented something that they liked.
Yep,
Great idea.
Thank you.
Let's do it.
bye.
And you're gone.
That's right. That was hard.
Severance package, anything?
Oh, yeah.
Or- okay. I was-
yeah, sure. But, you know,
But what was their reasoning
I had wanted
for?
to implement it. I was not a partner. Didn't come up through E&Y. I was just there on a contract.
I see.
See? And my focus was
But your time was up either way.
do what I asked it. Well, it would have been up, yeah.
Oh, I see. They just kind of
Yeah.
fast forwarded it.
Or they could have renewed me, but they didn't choose to do that. So the other one that comes to mind was I used to run real estate globally for Google.
Okay.
And was recruited by their controller at the time, who'd worked for me at Oracle. And so I went out there to Mountain View, and initially I got an apartment and
Mid-2000s
traveling all around the world. You know, I mean, it's big and it's a growing company and
Yeah.
everything. But moving back to California is way, way more difficult than moving away from California.
I see.
So that's why
Okay.
you see all the license plates around here all the time, because people can bring their money to Texas and do
Yeah.
real, real well. To
Maximize
go
it,
from
yeah.
Texas to California is much, much harder.
Yeah.
Even with good salary and all of that stuff. So the housing situation became difficult, a challenge that we couldn't find anything we liked that we could afford.
Yeah.
The commuting,
Okay.
from Irving to Mountain View, being on the road all the time, flying around the world, all of that. It just turned out to be something that I wasn't happy with.
Yeah.
And when I'm not happy, everybody's unhappy. So as much as I wanted to do a good job for them, I wasn't committed to it because I had all of this
Yeah.
stuff going on that didn't satisfy me.
We'll just say the home life wasn't clicking with the
Oh yeah,
career.
no, Lynn had a great job in
Your wife?
yeah, in
Okay.
Texas, and so none of it worked. So coincidentally, I was to be a speaker at a real estate conference in Las Vegas.
Okay.
Fellow that I had worked with at the Staubach Company years before, he and some of the other ex-Staubach people had bought a project in Frisco, Texas, that was failing. And
Things happen.
one thing led to another. It's not an easy commute from Irving up to Frisco every day,
Yeah.
but it's a lot easier than going to Mountain View. And I get to work with friends.
Okay.
And the challenge of going to some place that was where the city of Frisco was building an $80 million city hall and library
Wow.
in the middle of boarded up buildings and weedy fields.
And what was the population of Frisco at the time?
Oh, I don't know. But, since then they've obviously done really, really
yeah,
well.
yeah.
But it was a wonderful challenge, great opportunity for me. Another case of lots of broad responsibilities, things that
Yeah,
I'd never
yeah.
done, like the light show. And so I had a good time, and they appreciated what I did. And then I retired.
Okay. Well, but before you get to the retirement,
Yeah.
this is what I want to ask. So you get to Frisco, but somehow there became a Bob Shaver Day.
Yeah.
So how did that happen? Because I'm curious
Well,
about that.
Frisco's actually an older town. It's been
Okay.
around since cattle days and cotton fields and
Yeah.
that kind of stuff in North Texas, and had a reputation as, you know, the one blinking yellow light, and that was all that was there. So there was a strong contingent of people. Well, we've been here for a long, long time. There's another contingent of people that see the potential of the town, and then there's another contingent of people that are moving there because they're building great schools.
I see. Okay.
And that is always an attraction. Same thing that's happening in Leander right now.
Bunch of young parents want to make
Young
sure their
parents,
kids get
right. So you combine those three things. So my role was not only to put the project back on its footing, but to build relationships with the city and with the various other important elements in the town,
Okay.
particularly the schools, the Chamber of Commerce, those sorts of things. So the way I did that is I said yes to virtually everything that came along.
every opportunity.
Want to be on the parade committee? You bet I do. You want to, you know, do this event? Absolutely. You know, all the things that you can do to show people that you're there to support
the
them,
community. Oh, yeah, yeah.
support the community. And I always tell people that the people that I worked with from the city, the chamber, the lowest barriers to entry of any place I've ever lived and worked are in Frisco, Texas.
Really?
They just appreciate hard work and smarts and nice people.
That's
and
really cool.
To this day, I have nothing but, you know, tremendous respect for the politicians, the city staff. Everybody is just great.
And how many years were you in Frisco?
5.
5. Wow. So in 5 years, you pulled all that off.
Yeah.
And now you're enjoying retirement. Well, no, you sit on the board of Leander, the economic
So
micro group.
Right.
And,
So this is a group that meets once a month, and we mostly talk about and review the city's plans and the consultants' plans and whatnot for economic development
Okay.
in Leander. And so the former head of the school district is on it. The chamber president is on it. The mayor's on it. It's less than a dozen people.
yeah.
So it's a great opportunity for me, being the new kid,
Yeah.
but having some experience with and some success in other places, bringing new ideas to help them.
Yeah. And, you know, before we close out, is there anything that you want to elaborate on? So something else maybe that just popped to mind that you're like, oh, this was pretty cool over my career, or anything you've learned or nuggets of what I call game that you wanted to pass on to not just the younger generation that's actually watching, that are the corporate go-getters, but some of the ones that are currently maybe at a low
Right.
point in their corporate job, that they're like, man, it sucks. I hate coming to work. And
I would never discount the importance of building relationships.
Okay.
Because ultimately, networking can help you.
Okay.
You know somebody who knows somebody, and they are willing to help you. That kind of support is tremendously helpful.
Yeah.
I would not ever discount the element of luck.
Okay.
Being in the right place. I've told you stories, you know, as we were talking. Being in the right place at the right time and being noticed, just pure D luck. You know, things happen, and so don't ever discount luck. Ambition.
Okay.
You know, it can be used as a negative thing. Oh, he's so ambitious. If used in the right way, you know, with an idea of, I want to learn more, I want to do more, I want to make more, I want to help other people, all of those things can all be rolled into ambition. And I think that's tremendously important for young people as they're coming up. Give back to your community. You know, one of the great things about Xerox, going back to the beginning, was Xerox was a company that was
50 years ago almost
committed to its community.
I
And, you know, so we were always involved in local things, and it was a point of pride to be able to say I work for Xerox. Just like people feel that way, you know, when I work for Xerox or excuse me, for General Motors or Microsoft.
Okay.
Big, great companies.
Yeah. And the last question, because you brought up Xerox and something literally just came to my mind. Was it Xerox that came up with the first personal computer?
Yes. It was called the Star, and it was developed at the Palo Alto Research Center, the famous place where the mouse comes from and all these things. And It was sold and administered out of Dallas, Texas,
Okay.
Out of something called the Office Products Division.
Okay.
And I worked there for a while.
So, because I vaguely heard this story, but I'm trying to just put all the pieces back, because this is actually very important that a lot of young people don't know, or even older people might not know. So something about Steve Jobs, heard about it,
Yep.
came to, or did some kind of deal with Xerox, let me look at it, let me look at how it works, or something along those lines,
Right.
gave them shares of Apple, gave them some money or something like that, and then basically took it from them, and then turned it into something. Pretty much, or no?
Pretty much.
Okay.
It was the Palo Alto Research Center that was doing all this advanced work that people like Larry and Steve and the rest of them all, Bill Gates, everybody was focused on what was going on at Park. And because they were great scientists there.
Top tier.
Top tier place. The truth of all of that was, whether there was money or all that stuff, I'm not familiar with it. There's been a number of great books written about the history of Xerox. Okay. I think they're still relevant in terms of, how does a company like that become great? Mm-hmm. How do they fail? And, what happened? And Xerox made some strategic, terrible errors over time. And some of that was just human nature. Some of it was ignorance and stupidity, but it was a human organization, run by humans.
Could be egos also.
Could be egos. There were some egos at Xerox. But at the base, tremendous opportunity for young people like me. Mm-hmm. Great, education and a way to find out about yourself, find out about your own capacity, and a great ethical company.
Yeah. Well, very good, Bob Shaver.
Thank you.
You've had a very successful run and a very interesting run. Yeah.
I appreciate this opportunity very much. I hope this is helpful.
Of course, helpful to many.
Absolutely.
I appreciate your time.
All right, sir.